Good morning, everyone. Warm welcome to our IDSA live session today. I'm really happy that you're with us. I hope that everything is fine with my device, so you can see my camera and you can hear me pretty well. Yeah, I see that several attendees are still dialing in. So perhaps I will give us this one additional minute and make myself familiar with the control panel. Okay. Great. Yeah, let's see. So people will probably continue dialing in anyway. It's 11 o'clock, so let's start. Good morning once again. I'm happy that you're with us. We have a whole bunch of webinars, which we call the IDSA live sessions on different topics. And today we are in the sequel of the data spaces dialogues. So we really want to reflect on, well, the secret sauce to make data spaces happen. What are elements to be reused? What are crucial success factors? And well, where can you find inspiration for your endeavor in order to, well, set up data spaces, to run data spaces, to govern data spaces? And in the data spaces dialogues, we reflect this. We had several of these kind in the past already. And today I'm really happy that we have a special focus on rulebooks and why they are such an important success factor for data spaces. And today we want to reflect a little bit that when it comes to data spaces, it's not always a technical question, and it's not always about architectures, well, how to build these new ecosystems for federated data sharing. But we want to broaden our scope a bit and say and make clear that we really have to have a holistic view on data spaces, a holistic view on the governance for data spaces, and reflect beside the technical and the functional agreements also business, legal, operational, and organizational or administrative agreements in order to make data spaces happen. And well, we are working on this a very long time already, and we are not the only ones on the European and global stage to do so. And in the last month, we teamed up a lot with Sitra from Finland, so the Finnish Innovation Fund, which is really a great initiative to stimulate innovation on different fields of technology all over Europe. And they took a strong position in data sharing in the last years. And therefore, we teamed up already last year intensively. And therefore, I'm really happy that we could organize this session jointly with Sitra. And I'm really happy that I'm to welcome Jyrki Suokas from Sitra from Finland. He's well, it's written in his LinkedIn profile. He's a fair data evangelist, so obviously a very important person in order to make the European data strategy happen and to let us know more about it. So I'm happy that we have Jyrki today with us to give us an overview about the Sitra achievements on rulebook for data sharing. We, as mentioned, we teamed up with Sitra and crafted the joint rulebook, the IDSA rulebook, where we inserted all the groundwork from Sitra and added all the work from IDSA and our ecosystem. and this will be presented by Giulia Giussani from the IDSA head office. She's driving and building digital ecosystems, and she's also part of the adoption team of IDSA to really bring data spaces to life. And we will learn more, a short wrap up on the IDSA rulebook. And then I'm really happy to have Sebastian Opriel from Fraunhofer ISST with us. He represents Fraunhofer, so the big research technology organization in Germany, and Fraunhofer is with IDSA from the very beginning, and they have crafted, especially in the beginning, the technological core of IDSA, and they are still a strong driver for success of all the technical components of IDSA. But it is also their job to bring all the components together and to come up also with the runtime and lifecycle view of data spaces. And therefore, I'm really happy to reflect with Sebastian what could be next steps in order to really bring data spaces to life. So from the conceptual and design phase to the runtime phase. So it is called Data Spaces Dialogue. So it's not only me talking, and it's not always one representative talking, but we really want to stimulate a dialogue. So we will give you so roughly the first half of an hour presentations and an overview of what's going on Rulebooks, so with the topics I just mentioned. But then I would really ask you to jump into a dialogue, into the discussion. So we will then really have a panel discussion among the participants, which you do see here, but we really would motivate you to jump in. That is why we have chosen GoToWebinar as the tooling. So you are invited to raise your questions via the chat functionality, which you can see at the right part of your screen, this control panel. But you are also invited to open your camera and your microphone later on, so that we really can have a discussion. So it is thought to be like that, and I see that a lot of dear friends are with us. I do recognize a lot of colleagues also from the Gaia context. So a warm welcome to all of you. I see a lot of representatives from our European activities, so from the Commission and from research projects, and a lot of members of IDSA. So all of you, warm welcome. I'm looking forward to a really interesting discussion. And with that, I would close my welcome speech, which anyway took too long, and then I would hand over to Jyrki Suokas. So Jyrki, would you please open your camera? So there he is. So it's great to have you here. Jyrki, thanks a lot. And we are really curious to hear your presentation. So the floor is yours.
Excellent. Thank you, Lars, and thank you for the invite. Let me start the screen sharing, and now I can click the button. Yes, there we go. Oops. Bit slow, bit latency here. Okay, thank you very much. And as Lars introduced me, yes, it's an unofficial self-given title, Fair Data Evangelist, but that's what I do. That's the work I do. Sitra, the Finnish Innovation Fund, as described by Lars, is an organization. It's a think, do, and connect tank located up here in Helsinki, in Finland, and we have been doing a lot of thinking and doing while creating the first iterations of the rule book and the whole approach. And now what we're doing is a lot of the connecting part. So making sure that the tools, the things that we have created are being used, and that's how we are being measured, that how impactful our work is, how impactful our projects and our tools and the work we do, how it actually changes the world to start with, but changes the mindsets of people working in companies, changing the mindset of people, normal individuals like us, trusting the data ecosystems around us, and trying to create bit by bit a fairer data economy from what it is today. So there's two parts for the presentation. First, I'll introduce the framework, the whole approach for the rulebook, and then another Jyrki will give a presentation about the actual implementation of it at the test bed here in Sitra, how we actually ate our own medicine to create the legal construct that is actually needed in the real world. So this is not just a laboratory exercise. This is something that is really working in the real world as of now. Our starting point, well, it's starting point a little over 2 years ago was not this formula, but the whole idea there is that if you have, using the formula, you have multiple parties, you're starting to have, oops, my webcam disappeared somewhere. So you're starting to have too many connections between the different parties. So if you have 10 parties, you actually have 45 different connections between the parties. And if this would be bilateral agreements, as it actually is often the case, you're starting to have a jungle of bilateral agreements. How do you handle all of them? How do you make sure things are actually working? Our thinking and approach was to move away from different roles, having to have a model where you need to create multiple bilateral agreements, but instead create a rule book to which all of the different players in different roles have this sort of what is called the accession agreement, meaning that they agree to follow the rules of the rule book in the roles they are in the data sharing ecosystem that is being built. And yes, this is quite complex, and it contains a lot of legal agreement templates, but it also contains the process that is needed to create a rule book, not from scratch, not utilizing the expensive lawyer time, the expensive business developer time, but to have a starting point where there is actually, I think currently the version 1.2 has 76 pages of model agreements for all of the different types of agreements that are needed to create a well-working data sharing ecosystem, and the process that we use, which is called the checklist approach, meaning that there are multiple different dialogue points, meaning that how do we put the people together to discuss, to agree on the different, quite complex and multiple facets of business, legal, technology, data, and also the ethical side of data sharing. And the whole approach, as said, we've been working on this now over 2.5 years. There is a version out in English, Finnish, and Portuguese. Our dear friends at the SPMS, at the health ministry in Lisbon, they have actually translated the English version, I hope, the English version into Portuguese. And we support all 3 languages at Sitra site today, so you can actually download the version as of today. The intelligence is contained today in a Word document container, let's put it this way, which is now easy to use, but we do have plans to make sure that the tool is being developed into something that actually works easier in online tools and so on. So next, the other Jyrki, and now I will literally put a hat on, so you know that this is the different Jyrki that is now presenting. And Marco, I know that I'm not allowed to wear this hat before midnight Saturday, but I got the permission to wear this exactly for 9 seconds from the Helsinki University of Technology board. So I'll just take the hat off so you don't get confused. But now a different Jyrki will give the rest of the presentation. And this is the project manager, the implementer of the testbed rulebook at Sitra ihan.fi testbed. So what we did last year, we had a project where we had multiple parties, meaning our own Sitra internal lawyers, working and creating the rulebook, the actual set of contracts needed for organizations to join the testbed in different roles and to really create the models, share IPR, share data on the platform to make sure that everybody's rights are protected, but we can actually get data moving and we can start creating value out of the data that is being shared among the different parties. But the idea was that we had multiple, as said, in real life, you will need to have multiple different teams working on the rule book because it contains business, legal, technical sides of the data sharing sort of operation or use case that is being tested out. And yes, we had multiple different aims and goals. And first of all, the major goal was to test the rulebook approach, the rulebook template, that it actually we can use it to create a rulebook for the purpose that is needed. And in addition to the checklist, of course, in real world, you will actually need a lot of questions to be answered. And well, first of all, asked, but then answered. And at least here in the middle, hidden, what does fair and ethical mean? We had good definitions in our own rule book, but we needed to take into account what does this actually mean when you will have real world organizations working, sharing real data in the real world. How does this actually work? So we created a rule book utilizing the template, which contains the model agreements, and there is a actual IHAN testbed rulebook, which is much shorter because it's the actual contracts, the agreements, and the model how it is being applied at Sitra testbed. So we were able to verify that the process worked, and it's not overly complicated, it's not overly complex, and it's not overly time consuming, but it actually saves a lot of time due to the approach of having the model agreements in place, having the easy to use checklist approach to be able to generate a real working solution. And then this last part, the case within the case, is a presentation from SEB, a Scandinavian bank, Wärtsilä, making the world's best engines for massive ships, the ones you see here. And they actually created a proof of concept for corporate data sharing within the financial domain. And we had challenges, of course. How do we get two organizations actually really sort of going quite deep into the SAPs, quite deep into the banking systems? How do we actually create an agreement space where the co-creation can take place for this quite simple experimentation? And how do we make sure that all the parties are protected, everybody can still work and innovate, but still be safe? And the idea was that we will use the testbed as the decentralized platform for data sharing, and we needed the rule book to again ensure the rights and the responsibilities of the two parties and the developers who were also involved in the process of creating the proof of concept for trade finance, paperless trade finance. And again, enabler. Rulebook is an enabler. It was seen as the key component, and this is not our words, but the words from the bank's IT and legal team, and also from Wärtsilä's IT and legal team, because then this allowed them freedom but security to work in this environment and really start experimenting to make sure that the data is being shifted, shared, moved, and refined, so we can actually create a working proof of concept where we actually were able to take the paper, meaning weeks, days and weeks, and take these into an API-driven process where the bank actually can go in and grab information, needed information for these wonderful things needed in trade finance called letter of credits and all of the nitty-gritty detailed information directly from Wärtsilä's ERP systems, and thus reducing the needed time to create the documentation from weeks to days and hours. And again, the rulebook creates the legal framework for the corporate data sharing. Okay, let's get rid of all of the animation in here. So not just the technical platform needs to be in place, but a whole lot of the things are needed to make sure that we actually can share data, utilize data, and create information, insights, intelligence out of the data. And in the end, this is an ongoing exercise. So SEB, the bank, Wärtsilä, the client, so to say, in this. So we're introducing new partners, if an insurance company, so ensuring these massive engines that when they are being put into the ships and moved around the world, the whole idea there is that through the platform, through the rulebook approach, we can insert new partners, introduce new partners, invite new partners into the ecosystem, because there is the foundation in place, which is the rulebook. So that's it on my side. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Jyrki. That was a great overview and a great starting in our dialogue today. Yeah, well, let me check with the audience. So not too many questions or not at all in the chat. So please really feel free, ask questions directly in the question section in the control panel. So that then I'm happy to take them and raise them with our speakers. But for now, well, I collect them and take them later on. So now I would like to hand over to Giulia Giussani from IDSA to present what has been done on IDSA side. And well, I just want to let you know that the Zeta colleagues have been involved deeply in these activities, and it's not only the Zeta colleagues, but also several other Finnish friends and members of IDSA. So you already recognize the logo of 1001 Lakes, a company from Finland, which really takes care of building data spaces. And also we do have the Finnish research technology organization VTT, which works really closely with us. But all of this should have been said, and a lot more will be said by Giulia, and therefore I'm happy to open the floor for you, Giulia. Please take over.
Yeah, thank you, Lars. I hope you can see my screen.
All fine.
Yeah, perfect. So good morning, everyone. I'm very happy to be here with you today to give you an insight on what we've done last year with regards of the IDSA rulebook. The IDSA rulebook is a document containing all necessary rules to set up, participate in, and orchestrate data-driven business ecosystems based on the IDS approach, and to do that in a real-world scenario. The true value of the rulebook comes from the hybrid and holistic approach of IDS, which means that the rulebook does not only cover the technical agreements to ensure interoperability, but also covers the organizational side and legal side of data sharing. So by following these rules, all participants of such ecosystems can work together to really unlock the true value of digital ecosystems. In this context, you'll understand that the rulebook is a crucial asset because it acts as truth anchor for such ecosystem, not only tackling, as mentioned, the technical side, but also managing all the relationships and interactions of components and participants in these ecosystems. Since the IDS approach, as most of you already agnostic, also the rulebook can be replicated and applied in a variety of different scenarios and in different sectors. But let me go a little bit more into the detail. Yeah, here it is. The agreements contained in the rulebook can be wrapped up in 4 main sections: the functional agreements, the technical ones, operational, and legal. The first sections cover mainly the different roles that we have in the ecosystems, and in particular, it goes through the responsibilities and duties of them. Another important aspect which is tackled here is the definition of the essential services. And with this term, we really mean those services that must be there to ensure trust in the ecosystem. So for those that are more familiar with the IDS architecture, we basically mean the certificate authority, DAPS and Paris, to ensure identity management, and the certification body and everything related to certification. And then obviously we have some non-essential services, which we call base services, which are still useful in these kind of contexts to manage the metadata. So for example, the metadata broker, the app stores, and clearinghouse that logs the transactions within the ecosystem. Moving to the technical agreements, this section contains all the specifications for the standard. So here you will find all the important technical information and also the links to other important sources. So for the operational agreement section is a really consistent one, and you can see it's divided in 3 subsections: the governance, administration, and maintenance. In the governance sections, we've gone through all the bodies and their responsibilities so that we can safeguard the IDS standard. So for example, you will find there the responsibilities of the head office, the role and responsibilities of the working groups, task forces, the executive board, steering committee, and technical steering committee. Moving to the administration part, this is strictly related to the operational administrative process. This body here is defined in the functional agreement section, and it underlines the body that ensures trust in the ecosystem, basically, and coordinates the essential services. So in this part, the support organization can find all the guidelines related to the admission, suspension, and withdrawal of participants, but we also define the process to approve the evaluation facilities. For those
Julia, you really do have audio issues.
Oh, so
we did not hear the last 30 seconds.
Okay, I hope you can hear me better now. I turned off my camera.
Yeah, let's try it.
So going back to the administrative part, this section basically acts as handbook for the support organization. And with this term, we mean a body, which is also described in the functional agreement section, which has the responsibility to ensure trust and in the ecosystem and to coordinate the essential services. So in this section, administration, the support organization will find all the processes for the admission, suspension and withdrawal of participants, but it will also find a clear process for the approval of what we call evaluation facilities. With this term, we refer to the companies that will perform topic. So we clearly define different types of incidents and we specify the responsibilities for that management. In the maintenance part, we go through the versioning and release management processes, which is obviously very important, especially for the long term, because we want to ensure backward compatibility. Focused on legal agreements. Okay, I saw that my connection dropped again. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, it's challenge. Move on. So.
Okay, otherwise I will try to connect via phone. Moving to the legal agreements, in this section, we provide guidelines and best practices endorsed by IDSA to support companies create their own legal agreements and rules to foster compliant collaboration. So in this section, you will find, for example, the link to the Xetra Fair Data Economy Rulebook. And we think this is highly important, especially for multi-party data ecosystems, so that we can really support the creation of a contractual framework within the ecosystem. This is the overview of what you can find in the IDSA rulebook. We've published the first version, so obviously we are continuously working on it, and we are also working on the version 1.1 to add some recent decisions and new specifications, for example. So if you're interested, stay tuned for that. Are there any questions?
Yeah, let's take the questions and the discussion later on. Julia, perhaps you can dial in via phone by then. Then I'm happy now to ask Sebastian Opriel also to join me on stage, and Jirki, please also join us. And once you're reconnected, Julia, please do the same. Okay, so we can see the cameras. So I think Andreas, perhaps you can stop sharing your screen so then we can view the camera. Yeah, great. Thank you very much. Okay. Yeah. So now let's really move into this dialogue part of this live session. And yeah, well, we heard two versions of rulebooks for data sharing, which cover like different aspects of cooperation agreements for data sharing. So that's the reason why we teamed up, because well, the beauty with data spaces is it's all about cooperation and joint value creation between companies in a certain domain or cross domain, following the same goal. So and the idea is with a data space to add as many participants as needed, and mostly it's really so having as many as possible. And so not adding only the participants, so the players in a data space, but also while add the data endpoints, the data sources. And we have to make sure that all of these data sources are there, that they are findable, that they are accessible, but you can understand, interpret them, and well, you can reuse them. So that's the idea of fair definition, and then we really can create data in a data space. And well, the question what we should discuss also today is, well, what stops companies to build up a data space? And mostly it's a lack of trust into these data spaces, because they do not know what happens to their data once they expose the valuable data set to an ecosystem where they perhaps do not know the partners. So they are hesitant to share data, and this is well, a lack of innovation at the end. So therefore we have to come up with consent mechanisms in order to stimulate and insert trust into these data sharing ecosystems, which we call data spaces. And we heard one way or the starting point, so the cooperation agreements with the templates provided by the ZITRA data sharing rulebook, which is based a lot on legal agreements, on templates for all these cooperation agreements, and a lot of, well, issues like identity and authorization schemes. So, well, who may enter this data space, who may add data to it, and well, identity means, okay, who is this party which exposes and shares data, right? So these are all foundations for trust. So this is reflected, and then we have like a continuum, so we can work with contracts and legal terms, so that we have these agreements, but we can also add more and more technical solutions to increase the trust, so that we really can enforce usage control, that we can really make sure that the components with which you share data is not corrupted or whatever, so does exactly what we want it to do. Then we are in this continuum between like organizational agreements up to really technically enforceable measures, and that is reflected in both the rule books and well, when it comes to really trustworthy, secure data sharing, then it's rather the IDSA view of the world, and all these organizational foundation is perfectly brought to us by ZITRA. And perhaps I have several questions in mind. So let me leave the floor or give the opportunity for Sebastian Opriel to start into this round here. So when talking about bringing data spaces to life, my question is targeting at well, what has to be done now? So we well, let's have a look at an ecosystem. So in the mobility domain, in the energy domain. So they obviously came up with business cases, with use cases where they agreed, okay, that could be beneficiary for all of us. We could co-create value. So therefore, let's team up, let's share data, let's build a data space. And then they will have a look at the Zitra rulebook and say, okay, well, here's a template, we can go through it. So there's this checklist, so it's great. And then we can make use of a testbed, for example, and then we see what IDSA has to provide. So we can even think about the like the gateways via which we provide data. We call so that is how it would start. My question is, what is the runtime? So how does it move on from then on? How can we operate a data space, and what do we have perhaps to take additionally into consideration? So I think, Sebastian, you can share several insights on that.
Yeah, thank you, Lars. Yes, for sure. So let me start with where we come from, right? So we have developed all the IDS stuff and the specifications and so on. And in the last recent years, there were so many use cases evolving and developed technically, yes, showing what is feasible with the international data spaces. So, and we are right at the edge where we say, well, okay, all these use cases. So, for instance, a use case which I guided also was the Volkswagen ThyssenKrupp use case. Some of you might be familiar with that. So what we see right now is that we have successfully finished all these use cases, all these prototypes and so on. And now we need to shift, we need to move forward, right? And what that says and what it shows is that we need, yes, somehow a commercial offering in the end. So yes, we have all the stuff and we want to build products on it because we want to use it in the end, and we need service offerings and so on. And what we see is that currently, so we are also involved in yes, making thoughts about how can we come up with a maybe company to provide such services, because the normal use case isn't that the companies say, well, I want to develop all the IDS stuff by ourselves. They say, well, I want to use it, right? And maybe they want just to buy it because they don't want to handle all the IDS stuff on a technology level, right? They want to participate, but they don't want to invent the wheel again. And I think what that shows, and I rephrased one sentence in the rulebook, is that the rulebook absolutely fits into the current needings, because right at the beginning there is written down, don't reinvent the wheel, integrate into existing systems, integrate or use existing standards. And I think that's the current point we need to do right now. And the rulebook offers for this shift from use cases towards, let's make it really productive. Let's roll it out into big organizations. Let's roll it out in to 500,000 of participants. So I think the rulebook shows great how to achieve that, or how the path could look like, especially for yes, making use or providing business services. So I want to point out 2 points from the rulebook, which I, for myself, find really interesting. So first, it guides you. Well, nowadays we have the problem, who shall I address with an idea? Let's say I want to discuss something about homomorphic encryption or so what. So as an addition to usage control, maybe. So how do I do that? So normally maybe they send you an email, Lars, and say, well, let's discuss it. But in the rule book, it's written how we shall handle these things. So there is the technical steering committee, and there is written down if you have topics you want a sub technical steering committee, please approach the steering committee, the technical steering committee. So it provides you the path you need to go when you want to have handled topics and so on. And the second thing which I really like is that also for the commercial path. So there are the first guidance. So there's a section about admission of service providers, which clearly shows how to find a path to set up a company and what things must be done. So as Julia said, well, there is something to do in a document and something to redefine or better or to enlarge it. But I think this rulebook is really great to have first approach here to guide all these people currently willing to offer services. So, and yes, trust is at its heart. And I think that the rulebook of Citra and our rulebook or the IDSA rulebook are really nicely fitting together. And I think that we need more of these concepts or more of these written down so that we can say, well, here is the document, read it, and then you know how to make business or how to participate. That's great. So from my point of view.
Thank you very much, Sebastian. That a lot of praise, and I think you touched really this new perspective of really like well, the business part in data spaces, and we really have to arrange this. So I see in the chat several questions, and I would two of them probably combine and ask to you, Jyrki. The first question is, well, is IDSA the conceptual technical foundation for a rulebook like the one from Citra? And the second one is, how do you see the relation between such a rulebook and the emergence of contract engines? For me, this is a little bit the question of, well, convergence of all this activity. So that is my interpretation. So that is why we team up with Citra. We don't know what to do exactly, but we have to show that this is not, well, you can use Citra or IDSA. That's not the question. It's like a continuum, and there are elements. So perhaps we will join them in the future. We have other cooperation agreements. So perhaps you may reflect also on this, Jyrki, like iShare from the Netherlands. So this is also for like an authorization scheme. So really touching only a part of it, and it's also included like in our endeavors already. So Jyrki, what are your thoughts on this convergence?
Yeah, the first question about this sort of which one is the chicken or the egg, sort of which one is needed first. And of course, in a normal chicken and the egg problem, the only answer is rooster. So we need the rooster, we need the third party, and in our sense, the third party is the rule book. So it is technology, it's platform agnostic. So it doesn't really care if it's IDSA or testbed or iShare from our Dutch friends. The whole idea is that you need some sort of legal construct, the business construct, as was described by Sebastian, to really create a well-working model for all of the parties, for the IT guys, for the business guys, for the legal guys, to make sure that all of the different questions, the challenges are approached. I showed the slide of the many challenges and extra questions we had, and we tried and we succeeded in finding answers and then documenting those into the rule book, making sure that it acts as a living document, like a guide as described by Sebastian, to help people entering, participating, and even exiting data sharing ecosystems if needed. So there are certain ways of working rules, the technical side, the business side, the legal side. And the second question about this of the contract engines, the rulebook today is almost human readable. Well, it's lawyer readable, and lawyers, is it human language or not? But it's human readable version of the agreements, of the contracts. And in our thinking, we need to have some sort of machine understandable version of the rule book. So as each coin has three sides, this and then also the side. So we need to have the human understandable, the machine understandable, and the lawyer understandable versions of the rule books in place. And we know that the technical side, the sort of the machine understandable part, is something that we do foresee that it is in the future. So it is something that we need to have, and somehow is it like some sort of XML construct or some form of language that the machines can then understand. Then you write the rule book, create the rule book, and then there's the human, then there's the machines, and then we can start having machines making agreements between each other for maybe just for a nanosecond. But again, there is a way for the machines also to agree that this is the way we actually did this and that, by having some way of creating the trust also between the computers. Hopefully we will not have Skynet and then all of us get sort of annihilated in the end, but the whole idea there is that this is something we do see in the future. And maybe one thing that Sebastian was touching there on the productivity side, and we have this sort of almost sort of quotes from the technical and the legal side guys from Wärtsilä and SEB. First, they were asking that, can you do this? Again, they were not going to recreate the technical components of IDSA or the Citra testbed or iShare on their own, because it doesn't make any sense for a single organization to do this sort of ecosystem bits and pieces that are needed. And then the next question, of course, is, are you allowed to do something like this? And again, quite quickly, we went to the should you do this, and convincing that there is actually value of adopting this way of working. And now it's the only way of doing things, because that's the way sort of getting this sort of understanding that the rulebook creates a safe place for the business, the legal, the technology, and also the sustainability, the ethical people to work within across multiple organizations and companies.
Yeah, so Jeke, thanks a lot. So many food for thoughts also for our communication department. So great analogies. Thank you. Yeah, Sebastian, please.
Maybe I can support your Jeke, your argumentation. So what I also see is that we need a technical feasibility to do contracts automatically. So we're all talking about IoT, connecting machines and so on. And indeed, we need to share the sensitive information and need architectures for data sovereignty. But I foresee in the future that we really need machines dealing with contracts. And what you said, that we have machines, yes, agreeing on contracts. So there are big research projects also going on where we need to pay attention, or where we are researching on such concepts. And I think that's really the future, especially when we see supply chains and dynamic supply chains automatically rearranging them. So this is really needed in the future. And I think this is a big thing we need to pay attention to, and for that we can build such IT systems that automatically exchange contracts and agree upon contracts, we need to, yes, agree on a human level, right? And a lawyer level. So I'm not a lawyer part here. I leave that out, but the human level. And I think the rulebook is great for this level. So to say, two more guiding principles from the IDSA rulebook: be industry agnostic and applicable in all verticals and horizontal standards. I think this is great. So we don't need a one-time solution here. We need to have solutions and rules that apply to a broad range of use cases and the future where we share data, right? And I think this shows great how we can combine the two rule books in the end. So on the one hand side, we need the humans to agree on common rules, common standards, right? So to say, no, go away with your idea, that's really great, but it's not providing benefits to others. So let's agree on common standards, right? And the other hand side is then when we agree on human level, that we also agree on a technical level and the lawyers, right?
And maybe one quick comment on this one. My background is computer science, so this hat is actually from the Helsinki University of Technology, where I studied computer science a million years ago, and I used to know how to code. Almost made a living out of it. But in the end, if you look at contracts, agreements, they are like structured language. There's almost a document sort of structure there behind, like in a programming language, and it shouldn't be too hard in a very strictly formatted sort of legal text. Turn that into something which is fully understandable by machines. So lawyers are the nearest machines among human beings.
Yes, for sure. I think there will be several steps like the autonomous driving, right? So there are also, I think, 4 levels of autonomous driving in the end. I don't know in particular, but I think, as you stated, the first thing is when we have really nicely documented or written legal contracts, then the first step would be to use them and with natural language processing, transform them into maybe usage control constraints.
There we go.
Yeah. So thank you. Sorry, it's always bad to interrupt. So time is running out. So obviously it's really a dialogue today. So we have some more minutes to go. So I would once ask the audience to well, open your mic or even your camera to raise a question. So is there anyone willing? So please, the floor is open. Yeah, Andre Niemann. So you can also raise your hand. Andre Niemann, please.
Well, thank you very much for these very valuable ideas. I enjoyed it very much. And the only comment I would like to give is, as Lars said, at the end of the day, it's all a matter of trust. Trust in business, trust you have to have if people are interacting together, machine-to-machine interaction, human-to-machine interaction. It's all a matter of trust. And now the discussion about handling the data has picked up speed somehow, especially the latest activities by Apple are opening a completely new aspect of data security and privacy. So my question would be, why don't we, as the IDSA, position our standard much more clearly as a trust-embedded technological-based ecosystem, some kind of, rules and ethics, importantly, yes, as a service which is embedded into our technology? Why don't we go out much more clearly on this standard?
If I may add my 2 euro cents here, companies, organizations don't do anything from the goodness of their hearts, because companies don't have hearts. That's the starting point. Companies do things only for 3 things: to get more revenue, to lower costs, or reduce risk. That's the only 3 things that companies actually do something. More revenue, lower costs, reduce risks. And having a organization talking, even starting to talk to another company, is actually a risk. So in that sense, we are reducing risks, we are reducing costs because we have reusable components and also sort of legal components like this. And we can actually show that they can add revenue because they can start creating new services by sharing data, because no organization in the world today has all of the data of everything. So in that sense, we can address all of the three levers that you pull to make companies to do something. And then Rulebook is all about creating trust and ensuring that the trust is there while the operations are ongoing.
Yeah, well, thank you. Great comment, both. So Jyrki and Andre, and well, obviously we have to shape a little bit the position of IDSA. So you are at the heart of it. So let's do that. It's definitely great. Yeah. So unfortunately, time is over. Well, a short resume from my side. We hear a lot about like the governance for data spaces and the need of convergence and the need for standardization in the European Data Strategy, in the Work Program and Data Governance Act. So that is definitely where we have to, well, bring these messages which we transported today. Well, we are actually doing this. So please team up with us. Let's go this way. I think we have, well, a lot of answers. And for those of you who are to build a data space, try not to invent the wheel again. So all these consensual agreements for cooperation in a data space, well, most of it has already been defined. So make your life easy by using all these, well, generic common design principles, which are, for example, described in the rule books, and then really start creating value. So that will be my remark. So Andreas, I think we have a last slide to end this session today. So we will answer all the questions also afterwards. We'll share the slides, and you are invited for our next events. So Q&A workshop, so questions on, well, things like this, May 12th. The next Data Spaces dialogue is on barriers and opportunities for data sharing strategy. And so this is also, again, about this, well, governance. And then we have in June our big summit, where we really see like best practices of data sharing and data spaces in action, embryonic data spaces, and really live data spaces. Looking forward to that. So I would like to close with the words like, let's build data spaces. I think this year will be very interesting. We will see a lot. Well, get back to all of us to learn more. We are here to help. Thank you very much to Sebastian Oprel from Fraunhofer and Jyrki Suokas from Citra. That will be a great collaboration. I'm looking forward to that. Enjoy your day. Have a great day. And well, stay tuned with IDSA. Get in touch with us. Looking forward to discuss all of this further. Write an email. Give me a call. Goodbye. Have a great afternoon.